In this video, I'll be giving a tutorial on Python abstract base classes. But before we start, do hit the subscribe button. It really helps me a lot. Now, in a lot of object-oriented programming languages, there are abstract base classes in C++ and Java has interfaces and implementations. But to implement something similar in Python, Python has this class called abstract base class or ABC in short. So using this class, you can implement the abstract base class concept in Python that is similar to other object-oriented languages. So to start with it, you'll need to import the ABC module. So to import it, I'll just say from ABC import ABC. So just keep a lookout that the module name is like the package name is ABC and the actual class that is called is ABC in capital. Now, this is not a separate package that you need to install, it's already there in Python itself. So, to implement this, I'll create a class in Python called base class. Now, it doesn't have to be called base class, you can call it whatever that you want. And in this, we need to inherit the ABC class. Now, I'll just define a init function in this. Um, and just keep a pass. So I don't want to execute anything, but just to keep an init function inside it. Now after this, I will define a function. Let's call it func for function in short. And I will also keep passing this. I don't want to keep any logic in it, but obviously while actually using this, you will be passing in some logic into. Now, to create an abstract function out of this, there is a decorator called at abstract abstract method. So using this, let's see, we need to import abstract method from ABC, so that should be good. Let's just keep it right here. Don't want 1,000 import statements. Okay, so using this decorator, you can create an abstract method out of any function. So the steps would be inheriting ABC and adding this decorator on a function to make it an abstract class and the class with an abstract function. Now, if you're familiar with OOP concepts or object-oriented programming concepts, then you are not allowed to initialize an abstract class. So if you try to initialize this, so let's try to initialize it. If I just say obj for object for short, abstract base class, and if I try to initialize this, okay, it's not defined. I need to execute this cell. Abstract method, I didn't execute the import. So this should be good. It says that can't instantiate abstract class because abstract base class has a abstract method function in it. Now, do remember that when we use C++ or Java, abstract-based classes are checked during compile time, but Python uses an interpreter and it doesn't compile to some intermediate object code like Java. So all the type checking and basically this abstract-based class check happens during runtime. So we see a type error. Now, to actually implement this base class in another function, I'll define another parent class. Okay, it should be child class. And in this, I will need to inherit the base class. So I'll just add the init function. Now, while initializing it, if you're gonna keep some logic inside the base class init function, then you will need to call super.init to initialize the init function of base class. But If you don't have this function or don't have any logic, there's no reason to call this, but it's just base coding practices. Next, we will be actually implementing this abstract method function. So to implement this, we just gonna say the same thing, self, and let's put some logic in it. Function from child class. So let's execute this, and it's still base class we cannot initialize, and still we cannot initialize the base class, but what we are gonna initialize is the child class. So let's execute this. It got executed, and we can call the function method on this. So it returns function from child class. But if we don't implement this function and just try to implement the child class, then what it's gonna say is the same thing. We didn't initialize the function because it was an abstract method and we are supposed to initialize it. Now, if I remove this part of the function and try to initialize it, then it's still not gonna work. It's not like it's initializing because of the init method. So, so that's the basics of abstract base classes. Now, abstract base classes can be used to implement two other functions too. So, if you have been using Python for a while, you must be familiar with class methods. So, that is basically a decorator called class method. So, what this does is it creates a function which has the same instance of that function and changes the state of variables across all classes. Now, to give a quick explanation for this, I'm just gonna create another class. I'll just call it test, define an init method as usual. And in this class, I'm gonna add a variable called var equals 1. And I will define a class method. I will just say function1 need to pass the self variable. And what I'm gonna do is var equals 2. And I'm gonna add, okay, before adding, I'll just try to show you what this does. I will create two objects out of this. Object 1 equals test and object 2 equals test. Now I'm gonna change the value of variable by calling this function in object 2. So object 2 dot function 1, and then I'm gonna print object 1 dot var and print object 2 dot var. So as you expect, okay, it didn't change. Okay, it needs to be self dot var is equals to 2. Okay, so this is the behavior that we are expecting. We created two different objects, but we changed the variable using this function only on the second object. We didn't execute anything on the first object. So in the second object, it became a 2, but in the first object, it's still 1. Now, if I add class method on this, this is going to make this function a class method instead of a normal function. So let's again execute this, and as you can see, it also changed the object 1 var to 2 also. So what happens is when a class method is defined, any execution that takes place inside the class method has an effect on all the instances of that class. So test class had two object instances, object 1 and 2. Because I executed on object 2, it's gonna execute on all the instances of that class, which was object 1. So That's why the object one variable also changed. Now, this is kind of basically like static methods. It's a bit different, but you can think about it if you are coming from a Java background, but like this function has its effects on all the instances of the classes. So all the class states are changed at once. Now, using abstract methods too, you can define class methods inside this, and you could do the same thing. You will need to initialize it, and using this, you can implement abstract base class concepts in Python too. Now, another decorator that abstract method supports is property. So this is also basically a basic implementation of Python to create properties. Properties are basically functions that create a variable and a getter out of it. So if I say def test and pass in self and say self dot var. So I'm just gonna return self dot var. So if I execute this and create an object out of test and just say object one dot. Now as you can see here, it created a function test out of it. And if I execute this, okay, it gave me this. It shouldn't. Okay, I didn't implement the property method on this. Property. Executing this, and yeah, now here the test is a function, but still like not a function, a method, but still I can call it as a variable. There are no variables called test in this. So you can basically do this if you define property, and these are the two decorators that abstract method supports. So I'll just give an example for each of these: property method and class method, and I'll just call this class method. If I execute this, it's obviously gonna say we didn't implement these two methods because those are abstract methods. So let's implement this def property method and def class method. I don't know why it didn't show up. Okay. So if I execute this, it's gonna work, and you can use this function as class methods and properties. So yeah, that was all for the video. If you like this video and learn something new, hit the subscribe button, like my video. And if you want me to make a video on any Python concept, it doesn't matter if it's like really difficult or something, feel free to add that. And thank you for watching this video.